Good morning. It is Saturday, October 15th. It is early today. I mean, it's the same time as it is every breakfast at Tiffany or breakfast with Tiffany, but it feels early today. So we are down to the home stretch of the campaign. I think we have after this maybe just 2 of these left, and then I can sleep back in on Saturday mornings. Although, if I win, I think I might keep doing these for a little while, but maybe not every Saturday. I think that if you see me win, I will, I'll probably have one of these to answer questions about how the administration's going to go, setting up the office, and probably do a couple more to have sort of initial feedback from constituents as to what you'd like to see happen. So I think that you'll still see these going into the term just a little bit less frequently, and maybe a couple of weeks off so that I can get caught up on sleep. With 2 kids, and I'll have to wind up a law practice. That's just a lot of day job to do. So I'll still be doing outreach. I'll still be doing town halls. They'll just decrease a little bit in frequency because I'll be having to wrap up my law practice while also getting ready to start this new journey. So folks are starting to come in. The link was a little bit late to get up today. Usually I put them up a bit in advance, but I had obligations for the campaign that took me out of the loop. And there's something going on with my YouTube where it doesn't let me get my live link if I've got a Zoom or something before. It's a weird quirk. I'll figure it out eventually, but not time to figure it out in this campaign. So as folks are coming in and joining, please go ahead and drop any questions, comments, concerns you have in the chat. It's been a lot of a week that we can talk about. So lobstering's been coming up a lot lately. There was a rally this week. I can start on that. If you have anything else you'd like me to answer, just drop it in. Excuse me. I don't have a cold. I just haven't had enough tea yet this morning. So still getting my legs under me for the day. So this week there was a rally for lobstermen down in Portland at DeMillo's, and I had to be in Portland. I was turning in some law court briefs. So for those of you who don't know what that is, Maine's law court is the state equivalent of the Supreme Court. They handle a lot of case law, and when you are doing family law issues specifically, they appeal directly to that. There's no intermediary step. So I had to respond, and I had an appellate brief to turn in. So I was there, and I also had court that morning in Portland. So it was just sort of I was there, ran down to DeMillo's to see if I could listen. I think it ended up with an awful lot of lobstermen and lobster women express their concerns and frustrations, and that's really what I was there to do. I was there to listen. There are certainly more than enough people that are making their campaigns about this. I'm not surprised, but also a little surprised at the amount of oxygen it has taken up in the campaign. Not this campaign, but just campaign season. I'm disappointed and frustrated in our entire congressional delegation backing nonsense bills. Jared Golden's written a couple on this topic. The most current one is trying to defund an aquarium out on the West Coast. And that seems not only petty, but really like it undermines the government. I mean, if you disagree with an organization, of course, use your voice to do that. But anytime we have scientific spats, it doesn't seem appropriate to be defunding institutions and getting into wars like that, because we're going to have a lot of scientific spats in the next 5 to 30 years over climate change. And that makes me very uncomfortable because it's not solutions oriented. Slinging your bill around and helicoptering around a bill to say, oh, hey, I'm going to defund you if you disagree with me. That is not good governance. And I know I often will yell, do something, but that's not the something. Saying if you make a political statement, or if you make a statement based on your beliefs, that I am going to then come and try and use Congress to defund your institution. Um, that that seems like such a bad war to get into. And I'm disappointed, but not surprised to see Jared Golden do it. He seems to do what he thinks will get him votes, regardless of whether or not I find it ethical or appropriate. I am very disappointed to see the rest of the federal delegation sign out to it. Well, not surprised with Susan Collins. She doesn't seem to have any boundaries these days, but I am disappointed to see Shelley Pingree and Angus King kind of all get behind that. I think it is absolutely appropriate to get behind there being a concern about the conflict and tension between lobstermen and right whales. Absolutely, that's appropriate. But getting behind bills to defund organizations over petty spats and differences of opinion, that is not how the government should be used at all. And that is setting some pretty crummy precedent. I also am concerned that no one seems actually focused on figuring out where the gap in science lays. So for those of you who aren't aware, there is one group of scientific facts, I guess, and I'm going to use facts in air quotes. It's not that they're not facts, but they're assumptions based on calculations. So assumptions used on calculations, they're used all the time. That's how we show things like age discrimination or sex discrimination, where it's maybe kind of hard to prove that one thing is happening, but clearly in the aggregate something is happening. It doesn't necessarily show causation, but it certainly can show correlation, and it certainly can identify that there's a verified objective problem. And sometimes it can show causation, but not always. So they have used a lot of extrapolating of data because they don't have the hard data. The lobstermen, I have asked, I ran into their attorney at the rally, and I gave her my card and asked her to please send me their data. I have not yet received it. The lobstermen have different facts and data that I have not had the opportunity to review, that don't line up with what the scientists' assertions are. I suspect that there is some data missing. I suspect that a lot of larger boats, whether it's fishing or not, larger vessels are required to have scientists on board depending on what they're doing and the scope. Oil vessels have them, fishing vessels, larger fishing vessels have them. A lot of boats are required to have scientists on board. I don't know that was an easy process to make that happen, but it's been happening for a long time. So they've sort of acquiesced to that being the case. Smaller vessels don't need scientists on board. And I suspect that the disconnect in the data is probably because there haven't been enough scientists on the small lobstering vessels collecting the data that they need, or working with the lobstermen to get that. There's a lot of reasons that scientists wouldn't want, or that scientists may not have been going on those. That's a lot of man hours. There's a lot of reason that lobstermen and lobster women wouldn't want them on their boats. They could just they could not want them there because they are hitting right whales. They could not want them there because maybe they're fudging their numbers a little on their catch. They could not want them there because they're curmudgeonly and just don't want people on their boat. I mean, there's a lot of reasons because they're getting in the way. I mean, not all the reasons are nefarious. And I'm certainly not saying that, all lobstermen cheat on their taxes. Some do, but not all do. And some in any industry do. So please don't take that as a slight at lobstermen and lobsterwomen. I work with calculating child support, and almost anybody self-employed is very generous with their tax deductions and reporting. And that's how small businesses survive. So grain of salt. But I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Many of them are not nefarious. Some of them are a little bit squishier. And so I suspect that what's happening is that the scientists haven't actually spent very much time on the small vessels, but I can't confirm that. And if they did, there would be ways to determine whether or not there are strikes. I mean, or strikes or entanglements. So there's kind of the two things, although strikes aren't really the issue for right whales with the fishing vessels, because the fishing vessels are pretty small. But entanglements is an issue. And there are ways to determine it. They do have marked gear. They do have they do have lines they drop and lines they go back for. And there are ways to determine if those lines are still attached, or there's ways to collect it. And I'm not being very scientific in how I explain it, because this is not intended for a scientific audience. This is just intended for folks who are watching at home. So that has been a whole lot of hoopla. I'm a little concerned with how disproportionate it's been in the race, because though our lobstermen and women are certainly a part of the economy, are a very, very small slice of the economy overall. And it seems to have sucked up all the other issues and taken away the oxygens for some other things that we really have to worry about. We have, just in the environmental realm, we've got PFAS issues all over the place. There have been some hearings on that fairly recently. We have some massive social support failures that have not been getting enough attention. So inflation gets a lot of attention, but the things that are tied to it that help people don't get attention. And when I say tied, I mean connected. I don't mean that they have a tie to the inflationary indexes, which is part of the problem. So there's a lot of folks who are not getting the supports that they need to be successful, because the supports that they were issued were based on a different time period and a different inflationary setting. And so, whether it's food stamps or TANF or housing aid or Social Security is getting a big index, but it's not going to be enough to catch up. Those different pieces, they're not very well tied to inflation, or really at all tied to inflation. Social Security is, but it only indexes once a year. We should be indexing it more frequently. We also should be providing those supports so people aren't in a position where if inflation goes up 1 or 2%, they suddenly don't have enough food to eat. That's not a real support. So those have been some things that are not getting attention. That makes me very concerned. We did just have some of the campaign finance reporting is coming out between Jared Golden, Bruce Poliquin, and their associated PACs that are supporting them. They've spent $25 million on this race. $25 million. $25 million buying ads and flyers and mailers and signs to tell you things that they would fix if they had $25 million to spend, which tells you how inauthentic a lot of our campaign finance is. I mean, a lot of these races, people raise enough money and spend enough money that they could fix the problems or start fixing the problems that they are telling you are problems, which would be a much, much better use of that money. If you tell me you want to solve homelessness, if you tell me you want to solve hunger, if you tell me that you want to solve getting the right science for lobstermen, I don't care what the issue is, $25 million is a good chunk towards whatever those problems are. And that's how you should be spending the money if those are the things that you care about. For $25 million, if we bought 125 homes for 100,000 in Maine, we would have, enough money left to create a fund to maintain them. And we could have 125, small town homeless habitats, maybe shared housing that we made available for towns that don't have their own shelters. A ton of our towns do not have shelters and do have homeless problems. And so those folks end up migrating to Portland or Bangor or Lewiston, and it creates enormous pressure on those cities because they actually have shelters, but the shelters are full. They're beyond full. They're way beyond capacity, because they're just, there's not homeless shelters in almost all of our towns. There aren't the resources for it. We could create those solutions, but we're too busy spending money on ads, which is awesome. There haven't been any questions so far this morning. I'll talk for a few more minutes if you have questions, comments, or concerns. We are coming off of a very rainy storm and a very gloomy day or two, and I imagine that everybody is just as tired as I am today. I have been working gosh, 16 to 18-hour days trying to stay on top of everything. So it's been a lot. I am looking forward to being on the backside of the election. But until then, I'm going to be working very long hours to make sure we have a positive outcome. I've been getting sent a ton of folks with snapshots of their ballots. I'm pretty optimistic that we're doing fairly well this year. And we are in a great position in that because of ranked choice voting, I don't have to beat both of them. I just have to beat one of them to pick up the number twos of the one that gets knocked out to win, which is awesome. That means that, my baseline, of course, it'd be nice to win the first round with over 50%, but I really only have to get a bit over 30% to win, because it's pretty unlikely that people who like Bruce Poliquin are going to mark Golden as their number two and vice versa. So I'm in, not being one of the party candidates, I really only have to get a bit over 30%, which makes it a much more attainable goal. And I think we've got a really good shot this year. If you would like to help, I have some car repairs for my vehicle that finally caught up with me that I'm taking care of this morning. I'm going to be sending out some more postcard addresses as soon as I get back from the shop. I'm going to the shop after I finish this up today. So if you would like to do that this weekend and next weekend, this is the best time you could possibly help to send out postcards. I'd love to have the help if you want to do 5 or 10 or 50, whatever is comfortable for you. And other than that, we have door knocking going on. I have a bunch of events going on. We're still going to have some more not open houses. We have, I think, 3 town halls left and 2 more of these. Several other events coming up. So, yep, home stretch. Since there haven't been any questions and I've been talking for about 17 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and call it for the day. If you have any other questions, I'll be around Tuesday evening. I'll also be around the next couple of Saturdays. You can find me on social media. You can email me through the website, and my email is Tiffany@bond4.me. And excited for the rest of the campaign season. I hope you have a great morning.